All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Raquel de Hoyos, and I am so happy to be back with you all to do another cooking series. This one is called Meal Prep Magic. So, for our divas and dudes at home who are following along, we hope you join us for the next 5 weeks. But we'll be talking all about meal prep, have some great meal prep recipes, give you some good tips. This is kind of the time of year as summer is winding down. We're thinking about getting back into kind of our regular routines. And a lot of times, something as far as just kind of preparing meals, having things ready to go as we get back into sort of work transition. If you have kids that are in school, kids are going back to school. So this is kind of a great time to think about all of these topics. So we've got some great recipes. Today, we're going to start with the basics, the foundations. We're going to start with breakfast. And we have a delicious recipe. It's a spinach and turkey bacon egg bite. Has anybody heard or seen of these, tried them? Yeah, they're one of my favorites. I have tested this recipe several times with different ingredients. I like this one in particular because it packs a lot of great protein, flavor, and it apparently freezes very well, I was told. I have not tried to freeze them, but that's another thing. When we're thinking about meals that we can make in advance, sometimes you want to make a bunch, right? And just kind of save them. You can pop these in the freezer, maybe defrost them, like pull them the night before you want to enjoy them, and then just pop them in the microwave. So these are a really great recipe, and I'm going to walk you through how to do it. And then we're going to get to sample some because I baked some off this morning. And then we'll go into a little bit of kind of the basics around what I consider just kind of foundations for meal prepping. I was a private chef for many years, and so I did a lot of this for many, many years for many clients, and I loved it. And now I continue to do it for myself, and it really does come in handy because on those days when you're super busy and you're just getting home and you're like, what am I going to make? If you already have a day carved out where you've made some things in advance, boy, is that a lifesaver. And sometimes, I find myself like wanting, gravitating towards meals where I'm just like, I just want something warm. And if I've already prepared a meal and all I have to do is reheat it, that hits the spot. So take away what you will from this series. I'm excited to be back with you all and to hear what you all have as well as tips of your own. So let's get started. We're going to do a very easy recipe. So there's not a lot of ingredients. That's another key to meal prepping, right? You want something that's fairly easy. You don't have to be chasing down ingredients at the store. You want something very simple and quick. This one also makes your kitchen smell delicious. And I am always sad for my mother who has to smell everything as I'm packing up and leaving. But I did make her coffee this morning. So, okay. So I'm going to just walk us through what our ingredients are, and then we'll put it all together. I'll show you. Obviously, we don't have an oven here, but I do have some prepared so that you guys can try it too. So we have some large eggs, so I'm just using just regular eggs. H-E-B is a little sneaky lately. This does not look like an large egg to me. The sizes are a little bit, right? Look at this. So that's another thing. When you're shopping, we want to make the most of our dollars, right? Make sure you're getting what you're paying for. I looked through like 6 dozens this morning. They were all this size, and I was like, it says large. I got to go with this. So we're going to have some eggs. We also have some cheddar cheese, a little bit of milk. This is one of my favorite new things. This particular brand, I don't often promote a lot of brands, but when I find something I really like, I do. This particular brand I like because it's cottage cheese that doesn't have a lot of, so it's not very watery. It's kind of a dry, smaller curd cottage cheese, so it has really good flavor. So we're going to put some of that in there. We have spinach, great source of iron, right, and fiber. We also have frozen hash browns. So this is the brand that I got, but any brand will do. And they're frozen, so you don't have to do anything but take them out of the bag. We're going to put them in just like that. And then we have an onion. This is one of my favorites, the sweet yellow onion, but you could use any kind of onion. And then the other source of protein we have in here is this turkey bacon. And this is one that I like because it's pretty much already cooked. So we're going to just chop it into little pieces, add that to our batter here, and then that'll finish kind of warming through as these egg bites bake in the oven. Spices, pretty simple there as well. We're just going to use a little bit of dried basil and salt and pepper. So super easy. So let's put it all together. So what I'm going to do is just start by cracking our eggs. And I got really smart today. I'm going to put the shells in here so I don't make a big mess. But we have 8 eggs that we're going to use. Oh, I didn't do it the right way. That's okay. See, you guys get the uncut version. I don't know if they can cut that out. And I did have coffee this morning. Okay, so 8 eggs. Try to find the biggest ones you can. This will make 12 of these little egg bites, which is nice. So you can have, maybe 1 or 2 every morning for breakfast. Or maybe if you want to just go out and eat on the weekends, you got enough. Maybe you could have one as a little snack in the afternoon. I do like to have these with a little bit of fruit, kind of like pictured in the recipe there. And okay, so I cracked them separately because, sometimes there's weird funky things in the eggs, but I'm going to just put that into this bigger bowl. And then to that, I'm going to add our milk. And you know what I'm going to do? I know I'm wearing gloves already, but it just always throws me off. I'm going to switch my gloves. But we are going to add 1/2 cup of milk. This is reduced fat milk. You could use any kind of milk that you want. This would also work really well if you wanted to do it with like oat milk, almond milk, if that's something your preference. But just 1/2 cup. There we go. So kind of starting with all of our liquids first, right? And then we're also going to do the cottage cheese. This is pretty much exactly 1/2 cup as well. And see how it's just this nice, beautiful, small curd. It's not very wet. I couldn't eat cottage cheese for the longest time because there is heavy cream always in there. But this particular brand I seem to not have issues with. There is also another brand, I think it's called like Green Valley. But I've only been able to find it once and I've never seen it again. And it's like a lactose-free Green Valley, I think. This particular one is called Good Culture. Good Culture. Yeah, it's usually this blue label. It comes in a larger size as well, but I like these little ones. My mom loves these with a little bit of like diced peaches on top. Yeah, I think cottage cheese is kind of a love-hate. Some people really enjoy it, and some people just can't get past the, the texture. So I'm just going to whisk this up a little bit just so that I can make sure that those eggs are nice and scrambled. But we've got just some really, with all the eggs that we have, that's going to give these some nice volume. It's kind of like making a souffle, right? They'll puff up in the oven. We're going to bake these at 350 for about 30 minutes. And then pretty much until like the middle is set. So it's almost like you're making a muffin, except it's savory and no flour. Okay, so we've got that. And then I'm going to add some of our spices. So let's start with our basil. That's 1 teaspoon of dried basil. If it's summer and you're growing fresh basil and you wanted to throw that in, that would be delicious. But we're using dried today because, you could make these year-round and maybe you don't have access to fresh basil year-round. And then salt's just a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So keeping our spices pretty easy here. The other thing I like to do sometimes is like an Italian herb, a dried Italian herb. I think we've done a quiche recipe before, maybe in one of our earlier classes, and I think I used an Italian herb for that. Okay. Okay, we've got all of that. I'm going to set this aside just so that I can go through this next part. And we're going to dice up this onion, and we only want 1/3 cup of this. You could add more if you wanted to, but I think it has good flavor just with about 1/3 cup. So I just take this top peel off just to make my life a little easier here. And I don't cut all the root end off, just a little. And then do you all remember how I cut the onion? Easy peasy, right? So helps if you have a really sharp knife. And I just make a couple of cuts here horizontally, and then just do cuts along the top, kind of following the lines of the onion, right? Make it as wide or as little. I kind of like littler, just so that you don't have big chunks. And we are going to bake this for 30 minutes. So they'll be nice and soft by the time they come out of the oven, but I kind of go on the smaller side. And again, it's just 1/3 cup, so. Well, my secret actually is because I wear contact lenses. So somehow that doesn't quite permeate through my, because if I just chop onions, the other day I was chopping something and I had my glasses on and I was like, oh, yep, that's not going to work. So yeah, usually that. Some people just say weird things, like they'll say, put it in the freezer first, or rinse it off. Or my mom always used to say, put a piece of bread in your mouth, or like light a candle next to where you're cooking. I'm like, oh, these sound kind of crazy. Just have a really sharp knife, learn how to do this technique so that you can do it quickly and then your eyes don't water. I will say red onions are usually always much stronger. And so even with my contacts, those usually do make my eyes cry. So I have cooked many things and, you know, chopped a lot of onions in my day, but I will say red onions usually get me. So I'm just like everybody else. No special secrets there. Yeah. Okay, so that's 1/3 cup. I'm going to just set this aside here. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is add our spinach, which is about a cup of, I just kind of chop it a little bit just because I want to use all of it, even the stems, right? But I don't want a big stem like that hanging out of my egg bite. So I take a nice handful and kind of like when you're doing basil or any kind of herb, I just sort of roll it into a ball and just cut little ribbons. Yeah, just so that we're cutting some of that stem down and you get nice little color throughout your egg bite. But we want about a cup of that. Let's do a little bit more. Because spinach is good for us, right, ladies? We need our iron, and it's just, yeah. Spinach, any kind of green would work here. If you had kale, if you had collard greens, that would be kind of fun. You could do kind of a different spin on the flavors and ingredients in the recipe. I always like to play around with that. Okay, so in goes the spinach. And you guys know by the end of the class, my cutting board always gets a little dirtier. Okay, what am I missing? How about the hash browns? So these I'm not going to do anything with. They're perfect size. They're going to cook down. So I just add that in. And then the turkey bacon. But before I do that, I just want to give this a quick little whisk. Okay, so it's coming together. You see that? It just looks really colorful. The cheese you could add in. You could add it in the mix, but I like to actually put it on top so it's kind of a nice little garnish. So for our turkey bacon, I just take 3 slices of this and chop it up really nice. This stuff is pretty good. One of the things you might notice on our recipes this round is that I included nutritional information. And we're going to talk a little bit about that once you guys have a sample here, just because I want to be able to talk about some of the things we should look for when we're preparing our recipes and kind of how to adjust too if you have a particular diet that you need to be just careful of. So in goes our turkey bacon. You could use any kind of bacon. This one, like I said, I like it because it is already pretty much cooked. So just going to whisk this up. And that looks pretty good. We got lots of great flavors, lots of texture. I love the cottage cheese in there, honestly. I think this was kind of an accident when I originally made this some time ago. I just happened to have cottage cheese on hand, and I've done quiches with like yogurt, Greek yogurt, and thought, cottage cheese would probably work really well too, and it did. It just keeps everything very moist. So what we're going to do next is I'll show you just kind of so you can see how I do this. I have kind of a special technique I like to use. But basically what I do is, so here is my muffin tin, just like you're making muffins, right? I have these nice little parchment liners. You could make it if you had like a silicone baking thing and they could just pop right out, forget the liners. I wouldn't recommend doing it directly in the pan and spraying it because of the egg. It'll really stick. So I tried that a couple times, so lesson learned. I thought I could be smart. Yeah, I was like, let me save you some headache. The little liners are perfect. So if you wanted to, basically you're just going to distribute the batter, but you want to make sure you get all the goodies in each bite, right? So what I tend to do is I put my batter in like a measuring cup. And I'll use a ladle to kind of ladle everything out of that. So, or you could just go from the bowl to the liners, but I don't know. My brain sort of works like this. So this is what we're going to do. Because this is part of the meal prep too, right? People have sort of their little tips and tricks, and this is one of mine. So this way you can kind of mix it around and make sure that you're distributing enough of the egg and all the goodies. And what I tend to do, I'll just show you a couple here, but what I tend to do is I will go through and fill them about halfway. And then as I make sure that I have all of them full, I go back with the remaining batter and just even them out. But this way, you make sure that you can kind of dig in there, get all the goodies, and go back in, do that, right? So, and one of the other things I'll do too sometimes, just because you'll see from the samples, some do end up puffing a little bit over, is that I will put the pan on top of another baking sheet. Nothing should flow over unless you really pack it, which I don't recommend. But you can fill these pretty full. They're going to puff up a little bit like a souffle, but then once you pull them out of the oven and they rest for a little bit, they'll go down. So this is what it'll look like. And then the last thing is the cheese. So I just take a little bit, put it in the center there. And you could do anything, any kind of combination. This one really hit the spot. I tried a couple different combos. I've done some that have like little cherry tomatoes. The only thing I would sort of caution you about if you use any kind of wetter ingredient like that is don't put too much of that in there because you'll end up with a slightly wetter middle of the egg bite because it'll take a little bit longer to absorb that moisture, but still delicious. So you could do kind of like a Italian flavored one with the Italian herbs, the tomato, maybe mozzarella or provolone cheese would work really well with that kind of flavor combination. So that's kind of how I expand on recipes too. Like I'll go with a theme, right? And the ingredients kind of match that theme. And usually it's like 2 or 3 ingredients that kind of make it Italian or Indian or whatever, right? So that's another good tip too. So this is basically going to go into the oven. I usually put it in the middle rack. I baked it for about 20 minutes and then I turned it kind of like you would with a muffin, like regular sweet muffins, just to kind of make sure you're ensuring even baking. And then baked it for another 10 minutes, so 30 minutes total. And then just pull them out of the oven, let them cool a little bit, let them rest, and then enjoy. They're delicious. So I'm going to have my lovely assistant Rosie hand out some of those samples so that you guys can give them a try and tell me what you think. And as she's doing that, I'm just going to move some things over so that we can talk about now our meal prep and how that all comes together. So like I said, I've been doing meal prep forever and I've gotten really good at it. And that's the thing, right? Like once you do it a lot, you just pick up some really good tips. I'm always still learning things though too. Like I think it was last class when I was talking to you guys about putting berries in mason jars. That one's been around for a while, but it really does work. And I wish I had done that with some blueberries I bought recently because now the dog who loves blueberries has been enjoying more of them because they're pretty soggy. But they also go well in the freezer. So if you ever get to that point where you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't get to something in time, it's always the freezer. Just make sure that you're preparing it, right? Like maybe put the blueberries not like all in the container in the freezer because you're going to have one giant clump, but maybe put them on a baking sheet first, freeze them that way, and then throw them in a bag. Question?
I did the jar.
Uh-huh.
And my granddaughter is visiting this weekend. So I pulled out the jar of the blueberries and I said, and now we wash them. She said, well, why don't you wash them before you put them in? And I said, something about mold, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you were to wash the berries before you put them in the jar, you're basically locking in that moisture and they're gonna get moldy. But if you just put them in as is and then wash them afterwards, they do keep pretty well. Yeah.
About 2 weeks, I think.
That's pretty good. 2 weeks for strawberries in a jar. I love it. So Rosie is passing these out. They smell delicious. So I can't wait to try one a little bit later. But I am going to, while you all are enjoying that, let me know what you think. Let's take a quick look right now, though, at the nutrition label before we go into some of the other stuff. So calorie-wise, I always say breakfast, right? Most important meal of the day. So this is a great one to start off with. Right now, this says it's about 98 calories per egg bite, which is pretty good, like under 100 calories, right? But it also depends. If you're very active, maybe you need a little bit more in the morning. Or if you're not a breakfast person, maybe this is something that you have midday as a snack instead. So think about that. Good amount of fat, 5 grams, carbs, kind of low on the carbs if you're kind of watching that. So only 2% carbs for the full portion. And I would recommend one, although I tend to do two because I might just have this and some fruit. And protein, 7 grams, so that's really good too. Now the sodium. The sodium is a little high. It's about 12%. And when we talk about sodium, we want to make sure it's 10% or below. So I'm going to ask this question to you all. Of all the ingredients that you saw today, what could help us decrease the sodium if that would be something that you need to watch for in your diet? The turkey bacon, yeah. Yeah. You could also, if you love that turkey bacon, do less and also decrease the actual salt that we added. There is salt as well in the cottage cheese. So again, like thinking about some of those things will help decrease things if that's what you need to look out for. So I always try to make a recipe and not criminalize like the information on the nutrition, because there are different ways as long as we learn how to adapt if that's what we need to do. Because sometimes things just need salt, and we also, our bodies need salt. So
Question, can we just use egg whites?
you could just use egg whites. Yeah, if you didn't want the yolks, this would work great with egg whites. You'd have to kind of test it a little bit to kind of see how many more you would need just to kind of get the equivalent sort of texture and all of that. But what do you guys think? It kind of eats like a little quiche, right? Just without the crust. Yeah, that's what I love about it too. I actually had a delicious quiche yesterday at a coffee shop, and the crust was homemade, super thin, but I was like, I could have almost eaten it without that. I didn't need it because it was similar to this, and it had like tomatoes and little chunks of bacon on it, real bacon, not the turkey bacon. But yeah, so those are some of the things that I want you all to think about as we're going along in the series. And so that's why I also added the nutrition info. Okay, so any other questions so far?
It's so good.
It's so good. I know. Yay. I'm happy.
Do the frozen hash browns have salt on them?
They probably do as well. Yeah, let's take a quick look.
So could you do fresh?
Actually, no, this one says 0.
Oh,
So yeah, you can go all the way with the hash browns, because this particular brand,
right.
yeah, has nothing. The cheese, right? The cheese also. So yeah, there's different things. Even the spinach might have a little bit in it just naturally. So yeah, if that is a concern, sodium, just tweak things, moderate things as you need to. But yeah, this is a really good go-to recipe, and it really does. These hold up. I'll make a batch, and throughout the week, the taste, the texture, all of that holds up really well. And I just pop them in the microwave for a few seconds. I think, what did I say, like 30, 40 seconds each, and it heats it right through, and it's perfect for breakfast. I sometimes have them as a little snack in the afternoon too. They say, protein, 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 especially for us women, right, as we get older, because we're losing muscle. So let's make sure we get our protein, and these are a nice, delicious source of that. Okay,
The
well,
thing is that, I was looking at the protein, it's only 7.2 grams.
just 7 for each one. Yeah, yeah. So if you wanted to, what could you add to bump up your protein if you needed to do that for like one meal? Are there things that you think would complement something like this for breakfast?
I typically have like a protein drink as well.
Okay, great. Yeah.
On my way over here, I was having my protein.
Yeah, that's a great thing. A protein drink. What else would be a good source of protein to go along with something like this to bump up your protein? Yogurt. Yeah, that's a good one. That one would be perfect because there's definitely a lot of protein in that. Protein drinks for sure. Yeah, two great go-tos. But again, kind of adjust for your diet, your body, what it's telling you, how active you are, like what you need, right? Those are all things to pay attention to. Okay, well, I'm so happy that you guys got to enjoy them. Friends at home, I hope you give this recipe a try so you can see how delicious they are. But like I said, we're going to talk today about some of the essentials. So you all might already know a lot of this, but I like to kind of start us off with the basics. So we've got cooking equipment, some shopping tips, and some cooking tips. that we're going to be discussing today. Right out of the gate, I always tell people, and I've cooked in places too where I've had to take additional equipment because they just don't have the basics. And meal prepping will be less of a chore if you have some of the basics in your kitchen. And I will also say, on the opposite side of that, I am not a person who tends to have extra equipment, fancy tools, and gadgets. There are a few things that are kind of fun in my kitchen, but usually everything has to have serve a purpose. If it doesn't serve a good purpose, it does not get counter space or cabinet space. So, or my dollars. So it really has to like have a purpose for it to be in my kitchen. And it really doesn't take much. If you've been hesitant to do something like meal prep because you're like, well, it's only me. I only cook for myself and a little bit for my mom because she doesn't eat as much anymore. But I'm like, for me, it's a lifesaver, honestly, and it's just me. And I enjoy having something like this that I can just pop in the microwave, and I know that I'm taking good care of myself in that way. So for cooking equipment, here are some of the things that I recommend you have. Cutting boards, I always have a variety. I must have like 10 cutting boards now. I love these bamboo ones. I have several kind of like, they're not plastic, they're kind of that harder plastic. I also have a colored one for my raw ingredients. So I'll usually have like a red one for my raw ingredients. Some people go, color code. They have green for vegetables, yellow for fruit, or whatever. Like if that helps, knock yourself out. I love that idea too. A knife. In all my years of cooking, people have always asked me, what kind of knife should I get? Especially when they first start out. And I'm like, get the knife that's most comfortable and that works for your budget. Knives come in all shapes and sizes, all different price ranges. I have, over the years, cooked with different types, different styles, some that cost more, some that have been gifted to me and are like so big and enormous and heavy and super expensive. I probably never would have bought them myself. But I have found one that just works really nice. It's about this size. So, some people I've taught say that's too big for me. I want something smaller because I'm not used to cutting and I'm worried I'm going to cut myself. So get whatever works for you, feels comfortable. But this has, if you notice these little ridges along the bottom, that's to help so that the food doesn't stick. But also it has a nice wooden handle and it's all one piece. Sometimes you'll see where the handle is a separate piece, and I always feel like things can kind of get stuck in there, especially if you are not careful with washing it. So something that has kind of a whole uniform piece, and it's super light. And when I first started cooking, I got, one of those brand recommended, and it was so heavy and it was so large, and I have small hands, and I did that through culinary school, and I was like, God, this is not comfortable, until I tried different knives. And then I actually was cooking for a client, and the husband had this particular brand, and I was like, I forgot my knives one day. Imagine that. And he's like, go ahead and use mine. And I was like, these are fantastic. So I have been just an advocate for this. This particular brand is called Mac. It's a Japanese knife, but by no means have to get it. But it is for me, in all the years that I've been cooking, one of the most comfortable knives because it is so light. I don't want to have to think about things being clunky as I'm chopping along. And that's also going to make your cooking go faster too, right? A paring knife, I always love that. My mom will use paring knives for all sorts of things, and that for her, and and her dexterity as she's gotten older, that's more comfortable for her. So I always keep a bunch of those around. Mixing bowls are always great in different sizes. You see that I often bring like these little silver bowls when I'm doing my prep. I kind of have things stationed out like that. A colander and a wire strainer. So do you guys know the difference between those two? You're like, Raquel, that's the same thing. Anybody want to take a guess?
One's a finer mesh.
Yes. So the colander is probably what most people have. It has the bigger holes. Sometimes you'll see the collapsible ones, or just a big one, like one this size. Those are great for just, everyday rinsing your pasta, right? Or your veggies or whatever. But a mesh one that has maybe a handle is great for things like rinsing quinoa, rinsing rice, because it's smaller grains, right? You don't want it to fall through the holes. So I always try to keep both of those on hand. Obviously, your measuring cups, your measuring spoons. Today, you will notice that I had two different kinds of measuring cups. And do you guys know why? There's a plastic one, there's these measuring cups, and then there's this glass one. These are kind of the same, but trick question. Yeah, so typically the volume is different, right? When you're measuring liquid versus something dry. And so I always use these for anything liquid, as you notice, and this for things like flour or, things that I was chopping today. So it does make a difference. It's small enough but noticeable when you're cooking. If sometimes you're like, something happened, I did your recipe, Raquel, and it was off. If you use just this, it might be a little bit off because you're using a different measuring cup. I would say tongs for me. I don't know how many pairs of tongs I have, but I use them for everything. So that's always great to have. Can opener, obviously a vegetable peeler and a grater. My favorite vegetable peeler I think I've brought in is one of those with the horizontal blades, and they're very sharp. So when you buy one of those, be very careful. I just had somebody tell me his wife chopped her finger off when she was peeling potatoes. I'm like, yeah, those are really good, but the blades are super sharp. Yes. Potato mashers are always fun for mashing. Even, we did a cauliflower mash. You guys remember that when we made the shepherd's pie? Like, great utensil to have. Baking sheets of different sizes, baking pans, loaf pans, not just for making banana bread, but also meatloaf, right? So that's great. Muffin tins, as we use today. Different kinds of skillets. I like nonstick. Some people like aluminum, cast iron, if your budget allows. Some of those cast iron, like the Lodgeware, are pretty inexpensive. It does take a little while to kind of get them seasoned. And some people are kind of hesitant because they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. But cast iron is really good. Also, it adds iron to your food, which is good for us, right? I think it gives great flavor too. I have a giant Le Creuset cast iron that I was gifted for Christmas many, many years ago. And at the beginning, I was just like, this thing doesn't want to get seasoned. Like everything was always sticking to it. And finally, now it's perfect. But every once in a while, I do have to re-season it. But it just gives everything such great flavor. The sear that I get on things and when I cook in that is fantastic. And that adds flavor too. I can sear off some chicken or whatever and then finish baking it in the oven, but it goes straight into the oven, so it works dual purpose, right? You don't have to use any extra pans. I love those. Any kind of stock pot, like if you're making larger things, soups, boiling a whole chicken, things like that. Pot holders, obviously, that's a nice thing to have if you're doing some baking. And then the nice to have, so the cast iron skillet or Dutch ovens. You guys know what those are? Yeah, kind of those bigger pots where you could roast a whole chicken and some vegetables or do like a nice stew that you can stick into the oven. Blenders, any kind of blender, or those little stick blenders, also called immersion blenders. We've played with that. I think I've got that coming up in week 3 when we make a soup. Food processor, microplane zester is just kind of those little finer zesters for things like lemon zest and whatnot. And then I always have a coffee grinder for spices because sometimes I'll buy coriander and then turn that into ground coriander, or black pepper. I'll buy the whole black peppercorns and grind my own fresh black pepper that way. I do spice mixes sometimes, and so I'll just kind of throw things together, but it's always a dedicated grinder just for the spices. Okay, anything else you guys think that would be on here, or things that you have that you're like, this is an essential in my kitchen and it's not on this list, Raquel?
Something that I have, but I also think it's cultural. It's like the mortar,
The molcajete, right?
where I'm from, it's we call it pilon because it's like deeper. But
Okay.
besides that, any kind of
Yeah, like a mortar and pestle.
mortar and
Yeah,
pestle.
that's a great one too. I have kind of a little small marble one, but then I also have my grandmother's molcajete. Yeah, my brother has the actual stone. I have the bottom. There's a story there, but yeah, something like that is valuable too, because anytime if you didn't want to use the coffee grinder, my mom still does that old school. Like, she'll make her rice and she'll use that to kind of grind up all her spices. Yeah.
Especially I like to use it for garlic
Mm-hmm.
because it's different.
Yeah,
Like
it's more like a paste, right? And then you can add a little splash of water or whatever else to kind of make it something different, or do your salsas or things like that in there too. Yeah, those are great. Okay, moving on to shopping. So I think when it comes to meal prep, we'll get to this too, but part of it is people just don't have time, right? And they'll say, I don't know what I'm doing. If I'm going to walk into this, like, it's so overwhelming to think about. The shopping part alone can be overwhelming. And depending on where you shop too and how you shop, Just let's walk through some tips because, like I said, I've been doing this for many years and I've found some things that always work for me. I tend to be an early bird, so I am an early riser. Even as I've gotten older, I'm still an early riser. But one of the first things I'll do is kind of take an inventory of what I have. That's probably something basic 101 that everybody's always been taught. See what you have on hand. If you're the type of person who's creative because you see, oh, I've got beans, I've got some sauce, like canned tomatoes, like this is what I'll make, great. If you're the type of person who's like, I need a recipe, recommend a recipe, and I'll follow it to the T, like that's how I like to cook, then make sure you go through your pantry, your refrigerator, see what you have that matches up those recipes, and then make your list, right? And I always say check it twice because maybe you have something in the freezer. I always like to joke that things that are in the freezer are the freezer's where things go to die, right? Like we forget about them, right? We're like, oh, we'll get to that. Or we buy things in bulk and we're like, oh, I'll do that. But then nobody wants to take the time to defrost it. Like, oh, that's going to take so long. And I want to cook something now. Also a good reason why we should meal prep. But yes, make a list and check it twice. Shopping during off-peak hours. So when do you guys typically tend to do your grocery shopping?
Mine's early morning.
Early morning. Okay. During the week or weekend?
Weekend.
Okay. Anybody else?
I like to do it like early in the morning during the week or really late at night.
Okay.
Like when there was this grocery store that was 24 hour one, I would go at 2 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
don't sleep, so.
Yeah. Okay. So early morning weekends, early morning weekday, or late night. Anybody else?
Usually on Sundays.
Sundays? Sunday evening. Oh, Sunday evening. Okay.
That's a lot of people.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like I have found, here's a couple things to think about. When the store is most stocked with the best quality, most availability is early morning, right? Because they're overnight restocking everything. Now, they might also be doing that at night. So if you're going later at night, you're getting some of that as well. So you're kind of getting the two bookends of that. But that's something to consider too. If you all do curbside, I did that for the longest time too, because I was just like, okay, I don't have time to be doing this. And no shame in that. Like I always tell people, find the shortcuts. And if they help you and save you time down the road so that you have a little more like presence and energy to do the final step of like doing the recipes, do it. Just know with curbside, obviously, they're going to charge you a little bit more, right? Because that's the convenience of it. You go in the store and you're like, hey, how come that's like, 50 cents less? And it's like, well, you're in the store getting it yourself. So just make sure you're aware of that. But yeah, I've always been a fan of like, usually now it's Sunday mornings around 7 a.m. because the store that I go to is usually packed by about 8:30. So it's a nice time. I'm shopping with my mom. She's a little bit slower navigating the store, and I don't want us to feel rushed and have her be, in lots of crowds. So that's typically when I shop. Don't shop hungry. How many times have we heard that advice, right? So I have also been guilty of that. Get off after work and you're like, oh, I forgot that one thing. And you run in there and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy those brownies. I'm going to buy, like impulse buying totally, which, it happens. But if you can avoid it, if you think about it, sometimes I'll do a little just to kind of keep my brain sharp too. I'll say, okay, I just need these 5 things. And even if I don't have something to write down or I forget to put it in my phone, I'll be like, okay, Raquel, think about it. What are the 5 things? And as I'm driving to the store, I'll say, okay, it's the eggs, the milk, the dog food, like, right? Yeah. And I'll keep replaying that until I get to the store. And I'm like, it's only 5 things, right? So remember, what are all the 5 things? So that's also working my brain and helping my memory.
To you that you do that, but then you go to the grocery store, buy everything, but the 5 things that you were supposed to do.
Actually, I did that recently. I was like, I bought everything, almost the 5, and then I forgot the one thing I really wanted, and I was like, dang it, I forgot that. I've done that like 3 times. It's soap, and I keep forgetting it. So it's not food, so it's okay. But yeah, I have done that. Explore beyond your grocery store. I love this one because, especially here in San Antonio, we have one major grocery store, right? Well, 2. But there are, in certain areas of town, other grocery stores, and they have wonderful things as well if you happen to be in the area and you can shop them. They might also have great prices. And so if that happens to be available to you, I highly recommend occasionally popping into those other non, the main stores and just checking out what they have, because I guarantee you might find some things that are kind of staples that are less expensive than your regular grocery store. So I always say kind of expand your horizons, expand your shopping circle, and look at some of those other stores. Here, just in this immediate area, we have wonderful stores, all sorts of ethnic kind of ingredients, but they might have things like onions, some of the produce like that you might want to buy, less expensive than our regular bigger stores. Speaking of bigger, so anybody a Costco or a Sam's member here? Yeah, a lot of us, right? Buy bulk when it makes sense. So a lot of people get into the habit of just like, oh my God, that's such a good deal, I need that. And you're like, am I really going to eat 12 jars of peanut butter? Like, it'll last for a while, but if it's just you, it's going to take a while before you get to that peanut butter, right? So I always tell people, buy it when it makes sense. Or if you can go in with somebody and split it, that's always nice too, because it's like half the price for you, but you still get the bargain. So think about that. And just make sure that you have the space for it too. I've taught a lot of youth, and they're all like, "Oh, I just realized that we could do this." They're like in a dorm or something, and I'm like, "Yeah, but where are you going to put all that?" You got to make sure you have the space for it too. And then the last thing is look for in-store savings. So I don't know if gone are the days of coupons, because they still exist. I think you just have to be savvy. I had a niece who I don't think she does it anymore, but for a while there were people who just knew how to work the system when it came to coupons. And they would like spend $3 and get like $200 worth of something, but it was all this like couponing. It was like a thing. They might still be out there, but she was also getting things that were kind of like non-food, toiletries, household stuff. And if it works out and she had a family, like that made sense, but I probably wouldn't do that because it's just me and my mom. But like sometimes that could be a whole project if that's what you're into. There's digital coupons these days that you can use if you don't mind having like an app and kind of signing up for that. But also in the stores that you shop at, sometimes there's little nooks and crannies. And if you know where they are, you have like the clearance stuff, right? Or sort of like in the meat or the deli places, there's little cavities of places where you might find discounted stuff. And it's still great stuff, but maybe it's reaching its sell by date, which is still okay. You can still use it, or you could freeze it. But yeah, think about things like that, because I have found over the years in shopping in any kind of store, like even like a Central Market, like there are little places, and you'll find sometimes like you'll see the colored sticker that draws your eye in, because it's like, ooh, this is on sale. It's a yellow sticker, right? Your eye goes to that. And it maybe, I've seen a lot too, where they're discontinuing an item and it's a really great item and you're sad because it's not going to be you're like, they're not going to have it anymore, but I'll stock up on that. And it'll be like half the price because they're making shelf space for something else, right? So keep your eye out for stuff like that too. Okay. And then finally, smart cooking. These are some of my favorite tips, just to kind of help you move the meal prep along. So mise en place is a French term that basically stands for everything in its place. So as you notice, every week when I come and teach, I will have everything kind of set up just so that it's nicely organized. It also looks great on camera. But I do it for a reason, because it helps with the flow of how I want to, do the instruction. But when I cook at home, it's very similar. Some of the things that I used to get into the habit of doing, very important. I would go through my refrigerator before I even went shopping, and I would take out anything that was old. I would compost it or maybe turn it into something else, right? Maybe some of it went into the freezer, or or we would eat it for dinner that night before. But just kind of making sure you can kind of clean your refrigerator. That is a big piece. I don't know how many places I've gone in to cook and the refrigerator is crazy. And I'm like, how do you even have any order or know what's in there? One of my favorite things to do, I think it's a pet peeve of mine. The little plastic bags that you put your produce in. Sometimes people just put that in the vegetable drawers and they forget what they bought, right? Because you can't see it. Or containers that aren't clear. Like all those things help you visually see what's in your refrigerator. So I always take things out of the bag, put things in clear containers, especially after I've cooked it, just so that I know what's in there. Because out of sight, out of mind, right? You always hear those stories of like, I had good intentions, I bought all this stuff, and then I forgot about it because I forgot it was in there. And then you've got the spinach that's just like a wet, heaping mess of mush. because the bag sat there and you're like, oh, okay. So think about that. If you can't see it, you're going to forget about it. You're not going to get to your meal prep, and you're going to waste food. You're going to waste your dollars, and we don't want that. But yeah, try to keep everything organized. This is the keep it clean and clear as well. So keep everything organized, ingredients, including your prepared meals. Oh, one other thing that I used to do too was I would wash all of my produce before I started prepping and just kind of have it in a nice kind of either colander or just a space and so as I'm working, I can easily grab everything. And that could be your kitchen sink. If it's nice and clean, always start with a clean sink. Throw any dishes in your dishwasher if you have one of those. Like, make sure that your space is clean, essentially. Because if you come in, I've known people who just kind of come in and they've got stuff all over the counter, and then they start cooking, and it's like, you know how much harder you have to work to move things out of your space, right? Like, have everything set up. It takes a few minutes, but it really saves you time later. So break it up. This is one thing I always remind you guys to do. If some of this seems like a lot of work, break it up into chunks, especially if you're shopping, cooking, putting things away. I am crazy and I will shop early in the morning and then just come home, have a little breakfast, and then start into my cooking. Usually takes me about 4 hours depending on what I'm doing, but by about lunchtime, I got everything ready. I can sit down and actually enjoy some of what I've made. But I would say if you're like, oh, that's too much, and some days it is for me too. I'm exhausted from the week or whatever, and I'll go shopping on Saturday instead, or I'll do a curbside, so I don't even have to get in the store. But think about things like that as well to save yourself a little bit of energy and time. And then multitasking. So become a master multitasker and learn how to cook things, multiple things at the same time. That is a skill that you develop over time if you haven't been cooking for very long, but it is one that everybody can do. You remember the Ratatouille movie? Everyone can cook. Great words of advice. I love that movie because of that, right? If you learn a couple of these things along the way, the more that you do it, the better you become at it. I always talk about when I was out of college, I didn't know how to cook at all. And I made some crazy recipes and it was all experimentation. And then as I started cooking more and watching people cook and learning how to cook from professionals, like I developed a few habits that have just stuck with me, but it took time. Like I've done this for half my life. And something as simple as like what we made today, it's easy enough because you're just mixing it all in a bowl, putting it in that, baking it. But while these are baking, you could be making something else, right? You got 30 minutes. By the time these finish, you could have maybe boiled some pasta, started chopping up some veggies to add to that pasta. Like, think about things like that. And I always tell people, we don't just cook from recipes. We don't just cook from sight. We also use our hearing. We use our sense of smell. So like, for example, if you're cooking something, you can put some onions in a pan. You hear them sizzling, right? You can hear them, like the temperature of what the burner is. I always tell people to use all their senses when they're cooking because you might be able to tell, I can, that heat is too high and my onions are going to burn, or you smell them burning, or like when you're toasting something, right? You're like, oh shoot, I turned my back for a minute. Like, it's all a little bit of a dance, but you get used to it and you develop that habit of like using all your senses to do more than one thing when you're in the kitchen. So does anybody have, like, do you guys do that when you're cooking? Kind of try to do multiple things at one time to help move things along? Or are you focused on like, this is all I'm going to make?
I'll start washing the dishes.
That's a good one. Yeah, start wash as you go, because otherwise you got things piling up. And maybe your kitchen's really small and you also need to kind of keep things like, or you need the extra bowl because you're like, that's the only bowl I have, right? So that's definitely a great tip too. Like, keep things clean as you're working, because that will, like, nobody wants to see a stack or a pile of dishes by the time they finish cooking. Like, oh, how exhausting is that to look at, right? But yeah, so all these tips, as well as like the multitasking, that is something that develops over time, but it is possible and it saves you so much time to be able to cook multiple things. That's really one of the big key points of doing meal prep, is just learning how to do that specific thing. And then the last thing is dedicated time for meal prep over distraction. So what do I mean by that? If you can devote a particular block of time in your week for meal prep, I highly recommend it. Sometimes I change my day, but usually it's Sunday morning, because I know that's when I have the most freedom to be able to just enjoy, because I do actually enjoy it. Even when it's a chore and I'm exhausted, I'm like, no, because later this is going to save me. So make it fun, but don't get distracted. Like, it's easy to get distracted. You look at your phone, you start taking pictures, you're like, oh, look what I'm making today, right? Like, so many things. You can go down a rabbit hole, but make sure that you avoid kind of the distraction, the procrastination of it, and get yourself set up to enjoy doing it. Even I tend to recommend when you're first starting and you want to focus on doing something like meal prep, pick one thing. You don't have to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is a lot. I used to do that for clients, and I would be there almost 6 hours in their kitchen. And that was from shopping to cooking all the meals. That was exhausting. I don't know how I did that for years. I look back at that now, I'm like, wow, that was stamina. I was much younger. I mean, now I'm like, I'm happy if I get something for breakfast cooked off for the week and something for dinner. And I am okay with that because the rest of the time I buy little things in between snacks, everything that I know I need, like to replenish myself. I have my yogurts, I've got my protein shakes, whatever, like things that help me that I don't have to cook. So think about it in that way. Don't overwhelm yourself with having to cook every single meal for in one day. That's crazy. If it's breakfast that you really enjoy and you're like, gosh, it would be nice to have something every morning when I wake up and that I just have to reheat, start there, and then add on as you get comfortable. So that is my 2 cents for this week. I'd love to hear any of your additional tips or comments. Just kind of starting as we are with week one, the essentials of kind of getting ourselves prepared, getting our kitchens prepared, thinking about some of the basics of getting us ready to do meal prep. Anybody else have any other comments, questions?
I have to like, but I just learned these like not that long ago. I have really bad ADHD, so I need to have this stuff in my face. So I got these containers that they help you keep the products and the vegetables a little bit longer, but they're in my, I don't put them in the drawers or anything. They have to for me they have to be like eye level because if not I will ignore them and
Eye level, but in your refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
You're saying, and yes, that. See, that is perfect because I know, like, sometimes you look in the refrigerator and it's like you're almost tunnel vision, right? You see so many things in there, but if there's something very specific, like I do have specific little containers, like the one I used today, those little Pyrex glass with the plastic lid. I know that those are our meals, and you can see through it, and you can see what it is, and I usually kind of place them also at eye level so that, like, if my mom is looking in the fridge, she'll be like, I didn't see it. I'm like, it was right there. But yeah, it's a good thing. Clear containers are something that you're easily going to associate with, like, oh, I know what's in there because I made whatever, and it's the chicken dish, and it's in that container. Yeah, that's a great tip too.
I'm a big cucumber person.
Love
And
cucumbers.
so, like, I'll wash them on, on Sundays and then make sure that I have them all cut up,
Mhm.
prep up, and put them in a container. Very similar like yours, that it's
Mhm.
like, if there's any kind of water for because I love strawberries and berries as well, so I have a little container in the water and go to the bottom if I still have some water.
Okay.
And if those are pre-done and easy for me to snack on.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I would say what I also love about meal prepping is when you see it all laid out, like as things are coming out of the oven or whatever. I always have the other thing that I didn't mention are these wire racks that I put things on to cool, right? And so I'll see as I'm putting things in the container all of the colors, like all the good meals I'm going to enjoy. And that alone kind of gets me excited about, oh, look at all this. It was a little bit of work, but look at all these cool things that we're going to get to enjoy. And my mom too, she doesn't have a big appetite these days, but when she sees all the different colors and the variety of what's on the menu, she says, that gets her more excited about wanting to try something or eat something. So it's a treat for yourself too, like to be able to say, hey, look at all these cool things, all the different colors. Because, you could easily go and like buy something that's already pre-made. All you have to do is pop it in the oven or whatever, but you can do that yourself too. And it looks great. And you buy the containers, right? And those containers aren't that expensive. I have some that are plastic. Some people prefer glass, like the ones that I was talking about earlier. Do whatever's your preference, and then just have those devoted containers for what you're making.
Yeah, I like something called fresh green bags for fruits and veggies.
Mm-hmm. I've seen those. Yeah.
And yeah, and you could wash them out, and anyway. So like if there's lettuce or spinach,
Mm-hmm.
I will use these fresh green bags and it really keeps them fresh.
Yeah, fresh
It's
green
amazing,
bags for
yeah.
those at home. Yeah,
And
give
I
those
like
a
it 'cause
try.
you can use them over. I hate to be throwing bags out.
Yeah.
So that's what I like. And then recently I was over at Sam's and I wanted to buy something different that for the plastic containers. It's a heavier plastic, not all the non-whatever's in it, but it's a heavier plastic. And I bought it at Sam's, and it comes in 5 containers with 5 lids. And so what I did was I have these, this notes where you could stick on notes.
Oh, huh?
The smaller ones. The
Yes.
small ones. They're like that. So these containers, the only thing you can see is the top. You can look in the top and see what it is.
Oh,
But when
okay.
I'm putting it in the refrigerator, what I do is I put that little sticky note and say roasted
Oh,
Japanese sweet potatoes, and my family could see it.
yeah.
Because
So it's
that's the
labeled.
thing, to see it.
Yes.
Those people just regular people, or?
They're sticky notes, but they're the small ones. They're only about that big.
Are
They're
they
small.
removable labels?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just sticky notes. Like
Yeah.
the sticky note, like the
Little-
square sticky
Mhm.
notes.
Like a Post-it.
A post-it.
Like a post-it, but
That's
the
it.
regular ones?
Yeah,
But they're
regular
smaller.
ones.
But the smaller, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
or
get
you
the,
could.
the brand one. The
Ah,
brand
okay.
ones, yeah. You get the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I love those ideas because, again, the out of sight, out of mind. People just have you ever gone into the fridge and you just stand there and you're like, I know there's something in this fridge I'm going to eat, and you're just like looking at everything, but you're not really looking, or it's just not in there, and you're like, I wish I would have bought that when I was at the store. So, but yeah, the more that you label whatever it is for people to entice them, but I do think like having whatever container you enjoy that you think your family will respond to, and then what's inside it, right? Like as if they're able to see what you're preparing and see all that. Like there's something, I don't know, that my sense of order loves about seeing the little containers and everything just kind of placed just so all of that. I'm just kind of a nerd about that, but I love that because I can see everything. I can see, like, sometimes I'll even have a version of those larger Pyrex. They're smaller, almost like for a portion, and I'll have like my grains and my protein and then a little veggie, and it's like all in a row, and it looks so great and delicious. I'm like, I can't wait to eat that on Tuesday when I go to work. Like, yeah, and people at work will be like, oh my God, that looks great, Raquel. Where'd you buy that? I'm like, I didn't buy that. I made that. Like, and you can too.